Our Father, Messiah, Holy Spirit with us. Finishing out to Shemu'ėl. 21. There was a famine during the reign of David. So there was a famine during the reign of David year after year. For 3 years, David inquired of our Father in heaven, and our Father in heaven replied, "It is because of the blood guilt of Saul in his house, for he put some Gibeonites to death." The king summoned the Gibeonites and spoke to them. Now the Gibeonites were not of Israelite stock, but a remnant of the Amorites, to whom the Israelites had given an oath. And Saul had tried to wipe them out in the zeal for the people of Israel and Yehudah. David asked the Gibeonites, "What shall I do for you? How shall I make expiation so that you may bless our Father in heaven? So that you may bless our Father in heaven's own people?" The Gibeonites answered him, "We have no claim for silver or gold against Saul and his household, and we have no claim on the life of any other man in Israel." And David responded, "Whatever you say, I will do for you." Thereupon they said to the king, "The man who massacred us and planned to exterminate us so that we should not survive on all the territory of Israel, let seven of his male issue be handed over to us, and we will impale them before our Father in heaven in Gibeah of Saul, the chosen of our Father in heaven." And the king replied, "I will do so." The king spared Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, son of Saul, because of the oath before our Father in heaven between David and Jonathan, son of Saul. Instead, the king took Armani and Mephibosheth, the two sons that Rizpah, daughter of Ahiah, bore to Saul, and the 5 sons that Merab, daughter of Saul, bore to Adriel, son of Barzillai, the Meholathite, and he handed them over to the Gibeonites. They impaled them on the mountain before our Father in heaven. All 7 of them perished at the same time. They were put to death in the first days of the harvest, the beginning of the barley harvest. Then Rizpah, daughter of Ahiah, took sackcloth and spread it on a rock for herself, and she stayed there from the beginning of the harvest until rain from the sky fell on the bodies. She did not let the birds of the sky settle on them by day, or the wild beasts approach by night. David was told what Saul's concubine Rizpah, daughter of Ahiah, had done. And David went and took the bones of Saul and of his son Jonathan from the citizens of Yabesh Gilead, who had made off with them from the public square of Bethshan, where the Philistines had hung them up on the day the Philistines killed Saul at Gilboa. He brought up the bones of Saul and of his son Jonathan from there, and he gathered the bones of those who had been impaled, and they buried the bones of Saul and of his son Jonathan in Zillah, in the territory of Benjamin, in the tomb of his father Kish. And when all that the king had commanded was done, Elohim responded to the plea of the land thereafter. Again, war broke out between the Philistines and Israel, and David and the men with him went down and fought the Philistines. David grew weary, and Ishbosheth tried to kill David. He was a descendant of the Rapha. He was a descendant of the Rapha. His bronze spear weighed 300 shekels, and he wore new armor. But Abishai, son of Zeruiah, came to his aid. He attacked the Philistine and killed him. It was then that David's men declared to him an oath, "You shall not go with us into battle anymore, lest you extinguish the lamp of Israel." After this fighting broke out again with the Philistines at Gob, that was when Shebekah, the Hushathite, killed Soph, a descendant of the Rapha. Again, there was fighting with the Philistines at Gob, and Elhanan, son of Yair Oregim, the Bethlehemite, killed Goliath the Gittite, whose spear had a shaft like a weaver's bar. Once again, there was fighting at Gath. There was a giant of a man who had six fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all. He too was descended from the Rapha. When he taunted Israel, Jonathan, the son of David's brother Shemu'ėl, killed him. Those 4 were descended from the Rapha and Gath, and they fell by the hands of David and his men. David addressed the words of this song to our Father in heaven, after our Father in heaven had saved him from the hands of all his enemies and from the hands of Saul. He said, "O our Father in heaven, my crag, my fastness, my deliverer, O Elohim, the rock wherein I take shelter, my shield, my mighty champion, my fortress and refuge, my Savior, you who rescued me from violence. All praise I called on our Father in heaven, and I was delivered from my enemies. For the breakers of death encompass me. The torrents of Belial terrify me. The snares of Sheol encircle me. The toils of death engulf me. In my anguish I called on our Father in heaven, cried out to my Elohim. In his Obed He heard my voice. My cry entered his ears. Then the earth rocked and quaked. The foundations of heaven shook. Rocked by his indignation, smoke went up from his nostrils. From his mouth came devouring fire. Live coals blazed forth from him. He bent the sky and came down, thick cloud beneath his feet. He mounted a cherub and flew. He was seen on the wings of the wind. He made pavilions of darkness about him. Dripping clouds, huge thunderheads, and the brilliance before him blazed fiery coals. Our Father in heaven thundered forth from heaven. The Most High sent forth his voice. He let loose bolts and scattered them, lightning and put them to rout. The bed of the sea was exposed. The foundations of the world were laid bare by the mighty roaring of our Father in heaven. At the blast of the beast, at the blast of the breath of his nostrils, he reached down from on high. He took me, drew me out of the mighty waters. He rescued me from my enemies so strong, from foes too mighty for me. They attacked me on my day of calamity. But our Father in heaven was my stay. He brought me out to freedom. He rescued me because he was pleased with me. Because he was pleased with me. Our Father in heaven rewarded me according to my merit. He requited the cleanness of my heart. He requited the cleanness of my hands. For I have kept the ways of our Father in heaven, and have not been guilty before my Elohim. I am mindful of all his rules, and have not departed from his laws. Facts. I have been blameless before him, and have guarded myself against sinning. And our Father in heaven has requited my merit, according to my purity in his sight. With the loyal, you deal loyally. With the blameless hero, blamelessly. With the pure, you act in purity. And with the perverse, you are willing. To humble folk, you give victory, and you look with scorn on the haughty. You, O our Father in heaven, are my lamp. Our Father in heaven lights up my darkness. With you, I can rush a barrier. With my Elohim, I can scale a wall. The way of Elohim is perfect. The word of our Father in heaven is pure. He is a shield to all who take refuge in him. Yea, who is a mighty one except our Father in heaven? Who is a rock except Elohim? The Elohim, my mighty stronghold, who kept my path secure, who made my legs like a deer's, and set me firm on the heights, who trained my hands for battle, so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze. You have granted me the shield of your protection, and your providence has made me great. You have let me stride on freely, and my feet have not slipped. I pursued my enemies and wiped them out. I did not turn back till I destroyed them. I did not turn back till I destroyed them. I destroyed them, I struck them down. They rose no more, they lay at my feet. You have girt me with strength for battle. Brought low my foes before me, made my enemies turn tail before me. My foes and I wiped them out. They looked, but there was none to deliver. To our Father in heaven, but he answered them not. I pounded them like dust of the earth, stamped, crushed them like dirt of the streets. You have rescued me from the strife of peoples. You have rescued me from the strife of peoples, kept me to be a ruler of nations. Peoples I knew not must serve me. Aliens have cringed before me, paid me homage at the mere report of me. Aliens have lost courage and come trembling out of their fastness. Our Father in heaven lives, blessed is my rock, exalted be Elohim the rock, who gives me victory, the Elohim who has vindicated me, and made people subject to me, rescued me from my enemies, raised me clear of my foes, saved me from lawless men. For this I sing your praise among the nations, in him your name. Tower of victory to his king, who deals graciously with his anointed, with Dawid and his offspring evermore. These are the last words of Dawid, the utterance of Dawid, son of Yeshai, Jesse, the utterance of the man set on high, the utterance of the man Elohim raised up, the anointed of the Elohim of Jacob, the favorite of the songs of Israel, the favorite of the mighty one of Israel, the favorite of the mighty one of Israel. The Spirit of our Father in heaven has spoken through me. His message is on my tongue. The Elohim of Israel has spoken. The Rock of Israel said concerning me, he who rules men justly, he who rules in all of Elohim, is like the light of morning at sunrise, a morning without clouds. Wow, he who rules men justly, he who rules in all of Elohim, is like the light of morning at sunrise, a morning without clouds, through sunshine and rain, bringing vegetation out of the earth, is Is not my house established before Elohim? For he has granted me an eternal pact, drawn up in full and secured. Will he not cause all my success and my every desire to blossom? But the wicked shall all be raked aside like thorns, for no one will take them in his hand. Whoever touches them must arm himself with iron and the shaft of a spear, and it must be burned up on the spot. These are the names of Dawood's warriors: Yobesh, Yosheb, Bashebeth, Tekomanite. The chief officer he is Adeno the Ezanite. He wielded his spear against 800 and slew them on one occasion. Next to him was Eleazar, son of Dodo, son of Ahoai. He was one of the three warriors. With that way, when they defiled, the Philistines gathered there for battle. The Israelite soldiers retreated, but he held his ground. He struck down Philistines until his arm grew tired, and his hand stuck to his sword. And our Father in heaven brought a great victory that day. Then the troops came back to him, but only to strip the slain. Next to him was Shammah, son of Age, the Ararite. The Philistines had gathered in force, where there was a plot of ground full of lentils, and the troops fled from the Philistines. But Shammah took his stand in the middle of the plot and defended it, and he routed the Philistines. Thus our Father in heaven brought a great victory. Once during the harvest, 3 of the 30 chiefs went down to Dawid at the cave of Adullam, while a force of Philistines was encamped in the valley of Rephaim. Dawid was then in the stronghold, and the Philistine garrison was then at Bethlehem. Dawid felt a craving and said, "If only I could get a drink of water from the cistern which is by the gate of Bethlehem." So the 3 warriors got through the Philistine camp and drew water from the cistern which is by the gate of Bethlehem, and they carried it back. But when they brought it to Dawid, he would not drink it, and he poured it out as a libation to our Father in heaven. For he said, "Our Father in heaven, forbid that I should do this. Can I drink the blood of the men who went at the risk of their lives?" So he would not drink it. Such were the exploits of the 3 warriors. Abishai, the brother of Joab, son of Zeruiah, was head of another 3. He once wielded his spear against 300 and slew them. He won a name among the 3, since he was the most highly regarded among the 3. He became their leader. However, he did not attain to the 3. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada from Kabzeel, was a brave soldier who performed great deeds. He killed the 2 sons of Ariel of Moab. Once on a snowy day, he went down into a pit and killed a lion. He also killed a Mitzrayim, a huge man. The Mitzrayim had a spear in his hand, yet Benaiah went down against him with a club, wrenched the spear out of the Mitzrayim's hand, and killed him with his own spear. Such were the exploits of Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and he won a name among the 3 warriors. He was highly regarded among the 30. But among the 30, but he did not attain to the 3. Dawid put him in charge of his bodyguard. Among the 30 were Asahel, the brother of Joab, Elhanan, son of Dodo from Bethlehem, Shammah, the Harodite, Elika, the Harodite, Helez, the Palite, the Paltite, Ariah, son of Ikesh from Tekoa, Abiezer of Anathoth, Mabunai, the Hushathite, Zaman, the Ahohite, Maharai, the Netophathite, Heleb, son of Banai, the Netophathite, Ittai, son of Rabbi, from Gibeah of the Benjamites, Benaiah of Pirathon, Hididiah of Nahalakesh, Abai, Alban, the Arbathite, Azamaveth, the Perumite, Eliab of Shaban, sons of Yashin, Jonathan, Shammah, the Ararite, Ahiam, son of Sharar, the Ararite, Eliaphalet, son of Ahasabai, son of the Makathite, Eliam, son of Ahithophel, the Gilonite, Azariah, the Carmelite, Paarai, the Arbite, Agil, son of Nathan from Zobah, Benai, the Gadite, Zelek, the Ammonite, Nahariah, the Beerothite, the arms bearer of Joab, son of Zariah, Ariah, the Itharite, Gareb, the Itharite, Uriah, the Hittite, 37 in all. The anger of our Father in heaven again flared up against Israel, and he incited Dawid against them, saying, "Go and number Israel and Yehudah." The king said to Joab, his army commander, "Make the rounds of all the tribes of Israel from Dan to Beersheba, and take a census." The anger of our Father in heaven again flared up against Israel, and he incited David against them, saying, "Go and number Israel and Yehuda." The king said to Joab, his army commander, "Make the rounds of all the tribes of Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, and take a census of the people, so that I may know the size of the population." Joab answered the king, "May our Father in heaven, your Elohim, increase the number of the people 100-fold, where your own eyes see it." But why should my master king want this? However, the king's command to Joab and to the officers of the army remained firm. And Joab and the officers of the army set out at the instance of the king to take a census of the people of Israel. They crossed the Jordan and encamped at Aroer on the right side of the town, which is in the middle of the Wadi of God, and went on to Yazer. They continued to Gilead and to the region of Taitim Hodashah. And they came to Dan, Jaan, and around to Sidon. They went on to the fortress of Tyre and other towns of the Hivites and the Kenites, and finished at Beersheba in southern Yehuda. They traversed the whole country, and then they came back to Jerusalem. At the end of 9 months and 20 days, Joab reported to the king the number of the people that had been recorded in Israel. There were 800,000 soldiers ready to draw the sword, and the men of Yehuda numbered 500,000. But afterward David reproached himself for having numbered the people, and David said to our Father in heaven, "I have sinned grievously in what I have done. Please, O our Father in heaven, remit the guilt of your servant, for I have acted foolishly." When David rose in the morning, the word of our Father in heaven had come to the prophet God. David's seer, "Go and tell David, thus said our Father in heaven, I hold 3 things over you. Choose one of them, and I will bring it upon you." God came to David and told him. He asked, "Shall a 7-year famine come upon you in the land? Or shall you be in flight from your adversaries for 3 months while they pursue you? Or shall there be 3 days of pestilence in your land? Now consider carefully what reply I shall take. Back to him who sent me." David said to God, "I am in great distress. Let us fall into the hands of our Father in heaven, for his compassion is great, and let me not fall into the hands of men." Our Father in heaven sent a pestilence upon Israel from morning until the set time, and 70,000 of the people died from Dan to Beersheba. But when the angel extended his hand against Jerusalem to destroy it, our Father in heaven renounced further punishment and said to the angel who was destroying the people, "Enough, stay your hand." Our Father in heaven, the angel of our Father in heaven, was then by the threshing floor of Aruna, the Jebusite. When David saw the angel who was striking down the people, he said to our Father in heaven, "I alone am guilty. I alone have done wrong, but these poor sheep, what have they done? Let your hand fall upon me and my father's house." God came to David the same day and said to him, "Go and set up an altar to our Father in heaven on the threshing floor of Aruna, the Jebusite." David went up, following God's instructions as our Father in heaven had commanded. Aruna looked out and saw the king and his courtiers approaching him. So Aruna went out and bowed low to the king with his face to the ground. And Aruna asked, "Why has my master the king come to his servant?" David replied, "To buy the threshing floor from you, that I may build an altar to our Father in heaven, and that the plague against the people may be checked." And Aruna said to David, "Let my master the king take it, and offer up whatever he sees fit. Here are oxen for a burnt offering, and the threshing boards, and the gear of the oxen for wood. All this, O king, Aruna gives to your majesty, and may our Father in heaven, your Elohim," Aruna added, "respond to you with favor." But the king replied to Aruna, "No, I will buy them from you at a price. I cannot sacrifice to our Father in heaven, my Elohim, burnt offerings that have cost me nothing." So David brought the threshing floor and the oxen for 50 shekels of silver, and David built there an altar to our Father in heaven, and sacrificed burnt offerings and offerings of well-being. Our Father in heaven responded to the plea for the land, and the plague against Israel was checked. Amen. My Father and Son, Holy Spirit, with us. I pray you all have a wonderful, beautiful, great, and blessed day.